Hey, everybody. It's your girl Paulette. I'm the owner and founder of Brownstone Worldwide, which houses brownstoneworldwide.com. We have KCCR The Brownstone, our podcasting streaming app, and also Brownstone Living magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Lunch and Learn Hour. Today, we're going to be talking about a subject that many of us don't want to talk about, but we need to. Right? We're going to be joined by Katherine Beasley, who is the owner and founder of the Caregivers Connect. We're going to be talking about family care, taking care of our elders, and we're also going to be talking about end of life care and planning in this particular section. So, if I were you, what we always do during a lunch and learn section, I always say, grab your pens, grab your papers. We're going in because this is information that you need so that you can prepare yourself for the things that you didn't even think that you should be taking care of. So let's talk about Katherine Beasley and, of course, the Caregivers Connect. They're actually committed to empowering women of color as they navigate their caregiving journeys for loved ones with dementia or Alzheimer's. They believe in promoting honesty, integrity, and a deep sense of service in all that they do. So their safe space is designed to provide a supportive community where women of color can connect, share their experiences, and access the resources they need to care for their loved ones with dignity and respect, while reminding and guiding them to practice the self-care needed to do so effectively and without resentment. They're dedicated to advocating and for serving the underserved population and working towards creating a brighter future for all caregivers. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're going to add Katherine Beasley to the stream so we can get this conversation started. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very touchy subject that a lot of us don't want to have. And when we are having it amongst ourselves and with our families, somehow it turns into an argument.
Right. Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome. Okay. So I thought that it was best for us to have this conversation because what you're talking about, if you don't know someone directly with Alzheimer's or with dementia, you know someone who has a family member or they themselves have been diagnosed with early onset dementia or Alzheimer's, or you know someone in the community who has had it. And back in the day, it was just a thing, right? We didn't have a name for it. I forgot what they called it back in the day when I was coming up, but it didn't have a name. And it was just, this is what you did. You put Big Mama in the back room or Big Papa or Papa Daddy. And then we just did what we had to do. So one of the things that I know we said we were going to talk about was the portion of caring for a loved one in this situation. But before we do that, I always like to ask every one of our guests of the Lunch and Learn, what sparked your desire to start the Caregivers Connect?
So two things. One, to your first point, right? Not only do we just do what we need to do for them and put them in the back room, but there's a stigma that goes along with that, right? So the name for it wasn't a clinical one. It was they're crazy, right? Having this mental illness, which is legitimate for people our age and older, and the stigma that goes around mental illness in our community in general says we didn't have a space to really understand them and accept them for where they were because it was natural. It was they were crazy, right? And so don't listen to them, etc. And that's where putting them in the back room so that they're not out here acting a fool and embarrassing us is one of the big things that was happening back then. But to your point, I am now a caregiver for my mother. I'm 51 years old. My mom is 81. Thank the Lord she's gotten here this far. And she is no longer able to live at home by herself. And she was living alone and very capable and strong-willed and just made it all happen for me and my four brothers and sisters. And she's gotten to a point where she's not capable of doing that any longer. And so she now lives with me. And for the first 5 months or so, I just took this on and thought, oh, I could just do it. And there was no assistance that I needed necessarily. There was nothing that I needed to know specifically, right? It's my mom. It's my duty to take care of her because no one else was doing it. Right. And so out of 5 of us, I'm not going to be the 5th person that says I'm out of it. So
Right.
obviously I take it on because she took care of me and she
Yeah.
deserves it.
Right.
But I didn't know how involved it all was. Right. I am the youngest of 5, and I've been out of the home the longest. Right, I went away to boarding school, so I've been basically away from home since I was 14 years old. And I come
Wow.
back and visit, and in and out. And then I was in college, etc. So I didn't spend as much time around her as everyone else. And so I've always known her to be the person that made it happen. And now I see that she needs the assistance that she needs. So obviously she came to live with me. So I started the Caregivers Connect because what I found is, one, I can't do it all by myself.
Okay.
I need support. I need resources.
Yeah.
And I also found that I'm not the only one, right? When I first took her on, I self-isolated. And it wasn't because I didn't have friends and family members closer to me here in Atlanta. She We're originally from New York, and so she moved down to Atlanta with me. So it wasn't like I didn't have a support system in place of people who would help. It's I
Yeah.
wouldn't reach out. And so I gained 20 pounds. As you know, I am a part of a business mastermind with fantastic people who are
Yeah.
uber supportive and make a place for me whenever I show up for that space.
Right.
But I just dropped out of it. Like everything in my life went to the wayside because of what was happening. And I realized that is not the way to live. One.
Right.
Two, it's going to drive me to my grave faster than she
Yeah.
may go with this disease.
Yeah.
So there was some self-care that was needed, some reframing and reprocessing that was needed. And I realized too that I needed to have a business model that was something that was near and dear to my heart and that I was passionate enough about, and that was service-based. So I joined, I formed the Caregivers Connect for that first piece right there. Service in general, getting the information out, getting the resources to people, helping them to create care plans for how to care for a loved one, helping them to navigate the different systems, all of them that we have to navigate in order to get the assistance and resources that we need to do this successfully. And all from the perspective of a woman of color, because as you know, my friend, there's just a difference in
It
how
is.
we are perceived in general,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to healthcare too, and not being listened to and being in a position to properly advocate for yourself, but your loved one is really important. And the Caregivers Connect is a way that I can do all of that in a setting that really is specific for us. Everyone's welcome. I'm not discriminating, but
right.
what I'm doing is providing a space for us to have all of our concerns, or as many of them as possible, right, addressed in a way that makes sense to us, right? We have all of these fantastic national, local, whatever organizations that will help you, but they don't really know you or they don't understand you. So for me, it's taking that information and then putting a spin on it in a way that we would understand it and then can move forward and use it and really do well by ourselves and obviously by our loved ones.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the fact that you are focusing on the things that are important to our community, because I think what you're saying rings true. You and I had a conversation previous to, we call it the green room session, where we sit down and we kind of have a talk about the topics of our lunch and learn for the day. And one of the things that I can absolutely say without having to have any uncertainty whatsoever is that as Black women, we have to have people advocate for us and we have to learn how to advocate for ourselves, right? But when we're not able to do that any longer, that's when someone who cares enough about us as an individual, be it daughter, granddaughter, nieces, nephews, siblings, whatever, should be able to step up to the plate and advocate for you. So let's dig into that, because caring for a loved one has its challenges. Because what happens is that the life that you thought that you were living all of a sudden involves someone else. And most times it ain't somebody you birthed. It's somebody that probably birthed you and raised you. And one of the things that I know about our community is we're not big on putting our family members in professional care at another facility until we just cannot. And it's just beyond anything else that you can do. And so caring for a loved one.
And sometimes not even then, right?
Right. Exactly. And so what are some of the things? So let's talk about a couple things. One, money. Where's the money coming from to do this? Because 9 times out of 10, if it is a family member with Alzheimer's or dementia, they've probably exhausted their resources. You all have probably exhausted the monetary resources. Maybe the home got sold, whatever, bank accounts are exhausted based, or whatever. If they're getting any kind of retirement or Social Security, it's not enough to cover meds, doctor's visits, co-pays, all of the, am I close?
You are spot on. Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. So, and so there are 2 key pieces when you're talking about the federal government aid in the first place, right? Okay. When you age into Medicare 65, you get Medicare, right? And it has a basic set of services that you get, but the higher level services that are most often needed for this patient population are covered by Medicaid. So if you have a loved one who is deemed not in poverty by the really low standard that the government sets for poverty, which is not even realistic whatsoever, your loved one will automatically qualify for Medicare as long as they paid into the system, but they will not qualify for the portion of the federal government and state government really aid that comes when they need the additional benefits. So if you don't qualify for Medicaid, you have to figure out how to pay out of pocket for practically all of the additional levels of care that you need. So you want home care. And one of the key pieces that you were just talking about is, so we're going to take care of ours, but as long as we have to, right? And we have to do so in a way that doesn't overburden ourselves and burn us out. So one of the key things that you want to do is get a system in place, create a schedule, get some help, internal help, right? Because you are going to be working still more than likely. And if you're not, do you have the funds for that? Are you going to be 24 hours a day? No one should be doing this 24 hours a day without assistance. Just putting that out there, because again, I have lived that and it was self-imposed. But so you are looking at, how do I get home health care paid for? Right? Having an aid coming for a couple of few hours each day, even just getting that limited amount of assistance per day, an hour or 2 would make a world of difference for people. But when you don't qualify for Medicaid, all of that's coming out of your pocket. In order to qualify for, if you get to a point where your loved one needs to go into a home, you do have to be destitute, right? So if you have a home, the home needs to be liquidated. Right? They didn't make you pay out of pocket for everything before the government kicks in for anything, for the most part, right? There's some ways to possibly get around that, but in general, you will have to expend everything that you have or your loved one has built up in order to pay for a location that they would be in, like the for aging folks. And then what, right? All of what you tried to do to build a legacy for your family and everything else, if you don't have the proper insurance and other monetary assistance in place for yourself, is going to go to that care, and everything that you were trying to leave for your loved ones is just gone because you didn't prepare properly, like putting in trusts and things that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a moment, to make sure that those assets are separate and able to be used for what you need it to, and then and to be able to get access to the government care and assistance that you've paid into all of your life, right? You just age out of it, or you not even age out of it, if you have paid into the system, you want to get the most out of it, but they have so many barriers to being able to do that, and hoops you have to jump to get through and get to get it. So this is a lot. Just
a lot. It sounds like it is. It sounds like it's overwhelming. And so when you're talking about getting government assistance, are we talking about for support in healthcare? Is that to make sure that there's someone to help you? Because I heard you say the making sure that there's someone there that can help to give you a break, especially when you are doing it by yourself. Because I have seen, just like in your case, there are siblings, but usually there's one sibling that's handling the parent or
Right.
parents and everything, while everyone else kind of does their thing. Is that what I'm hearing? And getting
Yes.
that additional support can be hard.
Right. And so when we're talking caregiving, as you alluded to, it's intergenerational, right? I'm
Mhm.
51. I have children who who I've raised, and
Yeah.
luckily my youngest is 25. But there are
Mhm.
people who are doing this at an even younger age, right? Because
Wow.
we have that whole baby boomer generation who started having children later in life because they had goals and things that they want to do. So
Right.
now you have millennials. Like, it's not even just our age; they're millennials
Really?
who have to take care of their aged loved ones who are experiencing dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other issues that require them to have caregivers. Now you have
Mhm.
millennials having to step in to
Mm.
take care of them. So it's not just when we get to our age, it starts even sooner.
Wow.
Um, and so when you're talking intergenerational, for us, we have some of us who are still raising young loved ones that we have to care for. They have
Right.
relationships, personal relationships that we want to
Right.
be in and prosper, and then having to care for your parent or older loved one. Those are all
Mhm.
key aspects to things that are going to make you have to be really focused on making sure that you get what you need, because you have this person, and right, the difference, they were your parent, you had to listen to them, you looked
Mhm.
to them for guidance, you knew that they could
Mhm.
handle whatever came your way, and they were you can depend on them, and now vice versa, now they have to depend on you for everything. So the mindset shift for yourself is different, but imagine for them. I'm the
Yes.
mama. Who are you to tell me what to
Right.
do? That sort of thing. Not
Right.
and with dementia and Alzheimer's in particular, right? There are just certain things that you're told maybe you don't want to agitate them. So you don't want to argue. You don't want to be argumentative. You want to kind of back up and let them say what they're gonna say and redirect, and not, there's so much involved with it, right?
Right.
That says, in order to give person-centered care, you meet them where they are. You don't try to bring them back to where you are
Yeah.
and make them live in your reality. You go to their reality and try to maneuver and make them comfortable there.
Yeah.
And so imagine trying to tell your mama what to do. It's time to go to
Mm.
bed. Nope, she's gonna get up 5 times in the middle of the night just because she wants to, because she's not gonna let you tell her what to do, and then
Right.
you have to get any
Right.
sleep, right?
Right.
But that's a
Yeah.
whole other story. But the fact is that you really have to be prepared for the mindset that's needed for them, for yourself
Mhm.
to be caring for them, and to be able to
Mhm.
care for your personal relationship and your
Mhm.
children and yourself, right? There's so much of you that
Mm.
gets lost because you're
Absolutely.
still trying to do all the things. And sorry, fellas, as a Black woman, we've always been in the position where we
We
are
had to.
superwoman, and you
Yeah.
want to be able to do all of the things without having to ask, or without having to take time for yourself, right? Or not taking the time for yourself
Mhm.
because you don't feel like you can. And we can't do that anymore as caregivers, especially. We shouldn't do that to ourselves, period. But as caregivers for people who really will need so much of you, you have to take time for yourself first and foremost, because you will be no good to anyone else. So one of the key tenets of what we'll talk about in the Caregivers Connect is that self-care aspect. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be taking a whole day for anything. Can you
Right.
carve out an hour, 2 hours for yourself at
Mhm.
least once a week, right?
Right.
It may be ambitious to try to do something for yourself every day,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
but you have to make the time to do something for yourself on a regular basis. And our goal is to have our members commit to doing something for themselves for 1 to 2 hours every week, once a week,
Mm.
to be able to do that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
check in, right? So we're having some
Mhm.
accountability for it, and other things that we're putting together to focus on self care in our group, to make sure that we're incorporating that piece, right? We're going to
Mhm.
give you the resources and point you to ways and like local help that you can get, because I obviously want this to be national. I'm in Atlanta
Sure.
physically, and so my first tier of information will be national information, right? That
Yeah.
everyone can go to, and then there are local areas that um, local versions of those systems that are available to you that you want to
Absolutely.
make sure that you get in touch with. So high
Mhm.
level, and then you drill down, but you're making sure you're getting those resources and everything. But the one thing people tend to forget is the self-care aspect. And I want to be really clear that that's so important.
It really is. And I'll say this, as I've watched family members deal with this particular onset. It is so progressive, right? One day they're fine, and then the next minute they don't even remember you.
Yeah.
One day you look like the sister that they had that passed away years ago, and they call you that, and they could become angry or belligerent, or like you said, they're the adult, and now all of a sudden you're having to play that role to make sure that they're getting proper rest, to make sure that they're taking their meds, to make sure that they're drinking enough fluids throughout the day, and all of those things. So let's talk about that. Number one, continuing to care for a loved one while you are taking care of yourself, even if it's 1 to 2 hours per week. And in the middle of that, the other thing is support. Where do I find support for something like this? Because something that you said earlier, that rings true. It's like a stigma that is attached to something that is happening to so many of our loved ones. And even though there's, we could go into all of the evidence that they're finding out about Alzheimer's, and some of them are calling it the fourth diabetes, and that kind of thing. And there's progressive meds that are out there now that they're researching to kind of offset the disease and to help people get their memory back. We know all of that is there. But what happens right now? Because so many of us are in this place where we are dealing with all of the things by ourselves, and how it impacts our lives by taking on that loved one that you have the responsibility and the affinity to take care of that person, but you got to find the resources, you got to find the money. And like you said, I didn't know. So you schooling me on some stuff I didn't know. I did not know that they dang near want you to be destitute before they will help.
And for Medicaid, which is the system, the government system that will give you access to so many other layers of support, you have to be practically destitute in order to get that, unless you know how to maneuver the system and fit your way in. So we're going to have experts on for us, discussion forums and Zooms and things like that, Q&A sessions available to talk to people who can help you get through that red tape and get what you need. As legally, but you have to know, and that's a part of having the skill set to advocate for yourself, or having access to someone who can advocate for you because they've been doing this in any capacity in the system. When you have an understanding of how the government works, you can probably use that understanding in any instance. So getting access to those types of people is going to be one of the things that I want to make sure that we provide for our members, because you're going to need that help, right? Just like with regular insurance, right? The first thing they're going to tell you is, no, we don't cover that, unless you get the right lawyer who's going to be like, yeah, but you will, right? And who's going to fight for you, right? So if you are trying to do some of these things on your own, and you are not as pig-headed as you'd have to be to make sure that, oh no, but I'm coming back for this, and I'm going to keep trying until you give me what I want, right? Knowing how to get access to the help that you need that will get you over that hump is going to be key. So to your question, the support question, and resources, one of the things that I found is I wasn't talking about it. Like, I stopped talking to people.
Holy cow. Wait a minute.
So, I
so
wouldn't talk. Right?
You have to communicate.
Absolutely. So I have some key friends who knew, in my immediate family who knew. Outside of that, no. But the moment that I said, this is what I'm dealing with, it was amazing to hear, oh, me too. Oh, me too. Or I know someone, like you said, if it's not you personally, there's someone out there who you know.
Absolutely.
6 degrees of separation, no longer. It's 2 degrees, 1 degree of separation for people who have experienced this. And you feel isolated and alone, right? And like, they're not going through it if your immediate people aren't going through it. So I don't want to have a conversation about what I'm experiencing, because it feels like I'm complaining. Right. But I know that I'm in a safe space with my friends. I just wouldn't accept that. So they would accept that because they knew I would need it, but I didn't want that. I didn't want to feel like I was the Debbie Downer every time we all got together. So I stopped or I stopped picking up the phone when they called, yet alone making phone calls. So I self-isolated, and therefore I didn't know that there was other people out there who I could even just talk to about this and who knew,
Yeah.
and that would lift such a burden because you can just say this and they knew exactly what you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
Because they
there's
were
no
dealing with
judgment,
it.
right? There's
Right.
no
Right.
judgment. They have their own stories. They have some insight for you, even for
Right.
how, because they know, right? Not
Yeah.
you have really smart friends and who are intuitive or whatever. That's not the same as getting information from someone who's been there and done that. And so here's
Mhm.
how you might want to handle this because this is what happened to me, right?
Right.
It's totally different. So you want to make sure you put yourself out there enough
Mhm.
to talk to people, to learn who has that shared experience, which again is why um, having something like the Caregivers Connect is important.
Absolutely.
Because, okay, if
Absolutely.
you don't feel comfortable enough going to Facebook and saying, this is what I'm dealing with, so that anyone you know might be able to offer you some feedback and support potentially,
Mhm.
then going into a private group like this that's geared towards
I love
you
that.
as a caregiver
Mhm.
makes you feel safer, right? So that's the key point. It's a safe
Mhm.
space for you to be able to come to
Mhm.
because everyone in this community
Dealing with it.
is dealing with it, or like as you mentioned, we need to prepare for these sorts of things. So people even who aren't dealing with it yet but who want to be prepared for it because they know
Yeah.
it may come are welcome in our community for that very reason. We
Okay.
want to talk about what do we do to prepare for the time when we have to care for our loved ones. What do we
Mhm.
want to do, as we talked about in our green room session, what do we want to do to prepare our loved ones to care for us? I don't want my kid to feel like I do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not by far, I don't have the worst situation ever, but
Mhm.
it's traumatizing enough for me, right? If
Yeah.
I'm
I
being honest, it's
understand. Yeah.
traumatizing enough for me that I couldn't imagine having my kid have to deal with this for
Mhm.
me without putting the proper things in place, like
Right.
long-term care.
Long-term
So
care.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to get Medicaid because my mom, like, she's not qualifying for that because she made $2 more than what the,
My
the
God.
poverty level is,
Oh
right?
my
Literally,
God.
it's just like that. If it can happen like that, I should say. Then what do I put in place in advance?
Mm.
Every one of us who works or has worked out
Mm.
there,
Mm.
you fill out your insurance papers and your benefit papers, and there's a checkbox that says, I want long term care. And we think,
Yeah.
oh, we don't need that. You do,
You
right?
do.
Make
Yeah.
sure you get that in place. And what you want to have really is a long-term care plan that you can carry with you. So get your
Mm.
own outside of your job, or try to make sure that it's one that you can take with you when you leave one organization to go to another,
Yeah.
because that's that extra money that you can use that'll be available to you to be
Mhm.
able to pay for the home health aid when you don't qualify for Medicaid,
Wow.
right? So simple things like that. Or nowadays you have regular insurance products that allow you to pay, like the universal life. And I'm not an expert in any of this, but I do
Okay.
know that these are some things that are possible for you,
Uh-huh.
where there are some insurance plans that you're paying into for
Yeah.
the insurance benefit that you have, but then you get to be able to take money out of that while they're still alive,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if you had $1 million policy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Even if you had $100,000 policy or whatever it
Mhm.
is, right? You definitely want to have something more than just enough to bury someone. But if you
Okay.
have one of those types of policies that allow you to pay into it, and when they hit a particular threshold in health or some level of care where it costs extra money for them to be cared for while they're still here, you
Mhm.
can start taking money out of that plan
Mhm.
to start
Mhm.
to care for your loved one. And
Yeah.
then whatever's left is what'll be left to bury them should they pass away or when they
Right.
pass away, right? So
Yeah.
those are like just two instances of things that you can start to do now to prepare for the financial burden, um, what will be the financial burden for someone who has to care for you, right?
Mhm.
It's, some of
Mhm.
these things are too late for my mom because we didn't think about it,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and it's almost shameful to say that out
But
loud, but
here's
it's
the
the truth.
thing. Right. But here's the thing. I think what this is the reason why we're having this conversation today, so
Mhm.
that we can share this with our community within the neighborhood of the Brownstone,
Yeah.
so that we can start. First of all, let's break the stigma from it, right? Because it's
All
not
that.
taboo. It's gonna happen. And not
Mhm.
just Alzheimer's or dementia, but end of life care.
Right.
And we need to have these conversations, and this is difficult even for me to have, because nobody wants to think one day I'm not going to be here.
Right.
But when or if the time comes, and I have, and I'm prayerfully, I slip away silently in my sleep. But let's say,
pain free.
you know what I mean? So let's just say, for instance, that doesn't happen. And my children, I have 4, are left with that, like you were saying, with the responsibility of deciding who's going to be the main caregiver, how are we going to rotate so that mother is taken care of, where, and so I know one of the things that towards the end of this conversation we're going to be talking about is preparing for that for us, because we're not immune to death. You know what I mean? We're not immune to getting ill or, waking up one morning and not remembering, like my grandmother, what day it is. You know what I'm saying? We're not immune to any of those. So I think this is a conversation that is necessary. And we're pulling the wool off of our eyes that we're going to continue to hustle and grind forever, because we
and we don't want to. No one should want to have to do that.
Yeah.
And if you have an opportunity to prepare in advance, take it. Right?
Take it.
And so we're all about providing those resources. Brownstone here in our organization, at least to give you the option. If you choose not to do it, that's on you. But you won't be able to say any longer that the information wasn't available to you, because we're here to make sure you have it. Right?
Absolutely. See, come on. That's what I'm talking about. And that's just the truth of it. And so to everybody that is listening to this particular broadcast, if nothing else that you get from this, number one, you don't have to do this by yourself, because the Caregivers Connect is there. Number two, seek out the resources that you need so that you can alleviate some of the stress off of you, because this is a lot. This is a lot.
And stress heals. I don't know who told you it doesn't. Stress,
but it does.
Heals. It ain't just your hair falling out.
Right.
You can't sleep. Your stomach hurts. Like, it will kill you. And so I don't know the particular statistics, but it is very common for the caregiver to pass away sooner than the person that they're caring for. Right? It could solely be because of stress, but you're also adding in the health issues and disparities, right? They have their own health issues to care for. So I talked about, I have children to care for. I'm in a relationship with someone and I have to care in there, and I'm caring for my parent too. What about yourself?
What about you?
And we're still back to, and in our community, women do it sooner than men. But how often do we go to the doctor to get checked up? How often, even once we find out something is wrong with us, do we maintain and stay on top of that? Right?
Absolutely.
Add caregiving on top of that.
Yeah.
You have your own health issues, and then you have to care for someone else and monitor what they're doing. You're probably going to take the time to make sure that your parent gets to all her doctor's appointments, yada, yada, yada. What are you doing for yourself?
Exactly.
And when you don't pay attention to your own health, right? That's another component of self-care, but it's just the general caring for your own health and making sure you're going to the doctor, getting the checkups, and doing the things that'll keep you healthy or get you there if you have any illnesses.
Right.
When you don't do that and you add the burden of caregiving to that, you're probably going to be gone before they will.
Wow.
So we need to make sure that we're caring for ourselves.
My goodness. This is an eye opener. I'm telling you, because we don't think about it. Like, for some reason, and I say this often to my siblings and I say it is no longer that there are people that are older than us, even though there are, but we're the elders now. And it's just the truth. You know,
we're old heads, as they call us, right?
The
first time I was called an old head, I was indignant.
But here's the truth. We are now the aunties, as they lovingly call me, auntie. I have grandchildren, and to think that there will be a day that I will not be physically here for them, I would rather to leave them a legacy as opposed to a stack of bills and things like that.
Exactly.
I didn't handle my business. So let's talk about the next thing that I definitely want to talk about is helping the loved one who is dealing with this, right? So I talked about how my grandmother progressed, and I would go visit my aunt who she was staying with at the time. And I would one day she knew my name. The next time I came to visit, I was her sister, who they say I look a lot alike, who I look a lot like her. Or the next time it would be 3 days later, and she didn't know who I was, and she would sit there in absolute silence, and then it was a slow progression over time.
Right. So, right, what did that feel like?
It
Right.
it
So
was
you have to care for someone, but and ignore your own feelings, right?
yeah.
Or suppress how you feel about this sort of thing. Because although my name is Catherine, I'm Lois to my mother
Mm,
80% of the time. And
yeah.
Lois is someone that she grew up with.
Wow.
And I don't know why. I don't feel like I look like Lois, but whatever it is, she calls me Lois. And
Yeah.
at this stage, I'm Lois. Like, I do not correct her
Mhm.
unless she asks for Catherine, and then I say it's me, and then we have that conversation.
That
But all
conversation.
day I'm Lois, and that
Wow.
had to become okay with me. It wasn't, right? How about she lives with me, but she recognizes every last one of my other brothers and sisters, but not me, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
not to get into your own feelings is
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
gonna have to learn to do.
Right.
So sorry, to your point, it is just that, right? One day it's gonna turn. And again, there are times throughout the day that she knows who I am, but then most of the day she doesn't. And so
Yeah.
um she feels like I'm being polite to her, and she's so thankful that I'm caring for her. And then she talks
Mm,
about me to me, right? Me
mm.
as in the sibling, like her children who aren't taking care of her. So
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
I can smile about it now, but it's not funny. It's hurtful
Right.
sometimes. So I
Right.
know that she doesn't mean it, right?
Right.
But to your point about supporting the person,
Mhm.
literally, it is as simple as just giving them a couple of hours every now and again,
Yeah.
but scheduling it with them, right?
Right.
Don't
Right.
just pop up and hi, right? Create a
Mhm.
scheduled time so that while you're there, they can do something, right? If
Right.
you come to visit me
Mhm.
and you just show up and don't tell me, like
Mhm.
I love, and I have brothers and sisters, like I love my family.
Yeah.
But if someone is available to come visit with my mom, the first thing I want to do is leave. I don't want to sit and talk with y'all. I want to
Right.
have a
Right.
moment to myself and go, because
Yeah.
I do this all day.
Yeah.
It's nothing personal to you. I would
Of
love to
course.
keep the shit, excuse me, with you.
It's
But
okay.
really, if it's a matter of getting a moment to myself
Mhm.
or saying hey to you, ha ha he he, while we're together, and you're very capable of sitting with her and
Mhm.
occupying her time and keeping her
Mhm.
safe, I'm gonna get up and leave
Mhm.
because I need a moment to me that I can't normally get.
Yet.
Right? My mom
Mm.
doesn't like being by herself. So
Mm.
literally, and I'm sorry, she didn't like being by herself, and I'm the queen of wanting to be by myself. So that's
Wow.
right. So
Okay.
your whole life changes to that point you were making earlier. Once
Mhm.
you become a caregiver, the things that you were so
Right.
happy about
Yeah.
being able to do, and oh
Mhm.
well, I'm grown and now I could.
Yeah.
Now it goes back to you, the same way you have to make considerations for when you're caring for your child, you have to now make those
Right.
considerations when you're caring for your adult parent, whomever you're caring for,
Mhm.
who technically is a child at this point. Except in
Wow.
their heads, right? They're still grown and don't want you telling them what to do. But that's
Right.
so for me, literally, I work from home. I love being in my office, but
Mhm.
literally, when she wakes up, she comes and sits right behind me, on lays
Mm.
on the couch, like this whole bed, TV,
Mhm.
whole space for her. She doesn't want to be by herself, so she spends her
Mm.
time right behind me. I
Wow.
love her, but as someone who loves to be by herself,
Yeah,
even
it's
if she's just
overwhelming
quiet,
sometimes.
it's just
Yeah.
overwhelming. But these are things that I have to um, just accept, basically.
Right. Mhm.
So again, when as someone who wants to support someone who's caregiving, it's not always about, oh, let me come visit with y'all. It
Yeah.
is you giving them an opportunity to have a moment to
To
themselves,
themselves. I got
because they don't have that opportunity very often if
you.
they're
Mhm.
doing it alone.
Mhm.
Um, just care packages, like simple things, nothing expensive, or
Mhm.
you may not need to talk to them, right? They may not have the capacity to speak at that moment, depending on
Right.
what's going on. But
Right.
you sending a text message or leaving a voicemail that lets
Mhm.
them know you were thinking about them, just because you didn't need anything, you didn't want anything,
Right.
being there for them when they come back to the fold, as I
Right.
mentioned, and I have thanked you for on many an
Mhm.
occasion, right?
Yeah.
it's not about you. It's nothing against you. If that person's kind of disappears and goes into the background, they are going through some things. So you
Yeah.
just saving space for them to return and pick up where they are, and they don't have to feel guilty about not
Mhm.
having called you and or returned a call and things like that
Yeah.
is really helpful,
Yeah.
because then that also opens up, the opportunity for them to really re-engage with their lives as they're pulling
Right.
themselves out of that pit of despair that
Yeah.
they may have fallen into.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
when they know that they can come back and they still have the relationships that they have, and they haven't been adversely affected
Mhm.
by, the experience that they've just gone through or they are going through. That's the sort of thing that's helpful to, as someone who's going to try to support a person who is a
Mhm.
caregiver.
So support is a big thing, and self-care is a big thing. But let's pull back the conversation
Mhm.
that we all need to have. And that is number one, preparing for end of life. I wanted to bring this up, and I did talk to you about this ahead of time because I know this is a sensitive subject and we're all dealing with it. We just don't know that we are, because again, we hustling and we grinding on social media so tough. What are we doing behind the scenes to make sure that things are set up for us? And I'm being
We're
facetious.
immortal, friend. We're immortal.
We're immortal. We can do it all. We're gonna live forever, right? So one of the things that I have had, and we talked about this again during our green room session. One of the things that I have recently started having a conversation with my daughter is end of life care for me. What is that? And so backstory to the audience is I was telling Katherine about me going to an estate sale yesterday. It's one of the things that I do. It's a love that I have because I have a store outside of what I do here, and I sell estate items at my store. So we go to estate sales a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they leave out family photos, and the kids don't want anything to do with anything. And so they're tossing everything. They're giving everything away for $1. If you can get a truck, you can have it. And it's almost as if there is this lack of care because the father was still alive in this instance. They had just put him in a home, right? And mom had gone on. Had crossed over, let me say that. And the kids were literally giving their stuff away. Like I have a family portrait and it's like a collage. And these are the real family portraits. It's not the ones that you go and it's like the standard
Right.
in the photo.
when you buy the frame.
Yeah, no, these are the actual. And I thought, well, these is white folks. Like I don't, but I felt an affinity to pick it up because all somebody's going to do is throw it away. They're going to throw the photos away. And I didn't think that these people, whomever they are, deserved to be thrown away. But what I saw in the photo was a couple. And they were clearly in their 60s, maybe 70s. And it was like, wife in the front, husband in the back, that old school 70s photo. You remember that? And I thought for a moment, what is it going to be like as my children prepare for the process of me? What is it going to be like for me? And how do me, help to attenuate some of that so my children are not left with the burden of end of life care, end of life resources, money, housing, food, meds if I need it, those kinds of things. So let's have that honest and candid conversation as we begin to wrap, because we need to have this conversation. And it sounds like this needs to be a continuation, and we need to bring some other folks on because some of us ain't ready.
Right.
So let's start with that.
So, right, you said some of us aren't ready. We think it's a joke, but not really. We think we're going to live forever, or we have more time. Some people think it is superstitious. I don't want to talk about death, and that's certainly for older people, right? I'm not going to talk about death because then that means I'm preparing for it, right? Preparing to die, not preparing for being able to maneuver after that, right?
Yes.
So it's taboo by
Right.
so many people, especially older people, to
Right.
have something in place or have everything in place, right?
Right.
Everyone got that that little life insurance policy. People were coming knocking door to door to get you that
You,
$4,000 policy when when they were younger, and they
yeah,
thought they had something in place. And to them, I got it. I got life insurance. Yeah,
yeah,
that $4,000 will do nothing in today's
nothing.
economy, right? So you
Mhm.
need to prepare for all of these things in advance for your loved ones so that
Yeah,
they are not having to maneuver these waters and drown in them when this happens, because you didn't prepare, right?
right.
We are in our right minds at this moment as much as we can be, and that means that it's our duty to prepare for this, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, oh, we can do it. If you care for your children or anyone who's going to hopefully take care
Mhm.
of you, if you get to
Mhm.
a position where you need to be cared for, then
Mhm.
it's your responsibility to have these things in place. It's something that I
Wow.
want to make sure of
Wow.
and that people understand. Because again, the level of burden and stress and everything else that a caregiver takes on, if you can alleviate any aspect of that, you
Yeah.
should want to do that,
Right.
right?
Right.
So one of the first things, power of attorney.
Mm. Mm.
Find someone that you trust, but you have to have a power of attorney, have a will, so that you are delineating what you want to happen with your assets, where you want to
Mhm.
live, how you want to live out your life there. Like if
Mhm.
you are in your right mind and you can say, this is what I want, you should do that so that
Mhm.
they don't have to make these decisions later on for you, right?
Mm.
You get some input from them. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to go live with my son and he wants no parts of it. But
Right.
right,
Right.
you can
Of
get some
course.
input into all of that.
Mhm.
I will tell you, in all honesty, caregiving is not for everyone. So, Black
Mhm.
people, it's okay for you to not
Yeah.
want to be a caregiver, right? It's
Right.
okay. And that means that if you don't want to be a caregiver, you're putting things in place today so that
Mhm.
should that happen, that
Right.
person will be able to be cared for elsewhere.
Elsewhere. Yeah.
And so that means that life insurance policy that we're talking about, with the long term care insurance that we're talking about,
Mhm.
your HSAs. Now, those you usually have to HSAs or FSAs, depending on what you're using from your jobs, if you have them. Some of those have to be used within that 1 year, so that's a
Right.
little different. But if
Right.
you have a vehicle that you can use to store additional funds in
Mhm.
for that rainy day that is coming, then
Yeah.
you want to start doing those things.
Mhm.
Healthcare proxies.
Mhm.
Do you want to have your loved one have to decide how long you stay on life support, if that is the
Wow.
case? Do you
Mm.
want them to decide whether to put you on life support or not? Like, you have your own feelings about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Get those papers in place, or the paperwork in place today that says, here is what I want, so
Mhm.
that they don't have to make those decisions, so that you don't have different family members, right? Because it happens all day. We watch TV, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. We do.
TV mimics real life most
Mhm.
often than not, which means that those arguments that you see in these movies about take my mom off of child support, she wouldn't want not child support, goodness gracious, off of life support,
Yeah.
because she wouldn't want that. And
Mhm.
then the other one that says, I'm not ready to let her go. It's not about you, right?
Mm.
So when I say I don't want to be on life support, or I do want to be, there's no question. And your opinions, you don't matter, because I said what I wanted, because I've written it out, right? So you want
Mhm.
to have those sorts of that sort of paperwork in place. Again, really to alleviate the stress from the person who's caring for you, but for
Right. Right.
also to make sure that your wishes are being honored in the first place.
Of course.
So
Of
having
course.
those sorts of things in place,
Mhm.
having a centralized location where they know to look for your documentation.
That
Get a Google
part.
Drive. Let it be
Right.
scanned or
Or
something like that if
yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
have it electronic. But
Mhm.
the idea of not being able to find the paperwork, not knowing where your life insurance policy or C's are, so
Mm.
now there's money left on the table when you pass away because they didn't know where to look.
My
Right?
goodness.
No one wants to have a GoFundMe to bury their loved one.
Child,
We don't
listen.
want to. And there are
Right.
things that we can do today. They are not
Mhm.
expensive, folks, right?
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
we have to forego instant gratification sometimes to put in place things that
Yes.
are necessary for the future. And that means I can't go to the club and spend $200 every week.
Come
Not
on
even that.
now. Come
Shoot, one
on.
time, right? If I don't go to the club and
Yeah.
spend $200 one time, that's a hellified insurance policy that I could be
Mhm.
paying into for the future for myself, or even for my loved ones too. So having
Right.
those basic protections in place is something that not all of us even have.
Mhm.
no matter how much we hear about it. And so that's why you see all of these GoFundMe's. They are so inexpensive. We get inundated in social media with all of these. Um, here, here's a $10,000 policy for $1, $10, right? If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can afford to get one of those and they're not testing you, you just automatically qualify for
You
$10,000.
automatically qualify. Yeah, so I don't
What's going
understand.
on, people? Right?
Yeah, and that's, it's so funny that you say that. We can go buy a scratch off, but we won't get some insurance. I
Sis,
don't. Yeah,
this is my
that part.
point. Priorities.
Yeah.
And again, we're here to start this discussion or to keep it going because we're not the first ones, right?
No,
We
we're
want to
not.
perpetuate it and put it
Right.
back in people's faces so that they
Yep.
see and know and accept that this is something to prepare for. And
Yes.
having, right, everyone, when you get your job, you feel good about the you feel
Right.
good about the benefits that you're going to get. Oh, I got insurance. Well, is that insurance going to follow you when you no longer work here? It's not
That
enough
part.
for you
Come
to
on.
only have insurance with your job, because when you don't
Yeah.
have that job anymore, now
Yeah.
you're stuck without it, and you let yourself
Mm-hmm.
grow older, and now you have
Mm-hmm.
to have a medical exam before you qualify for certain levels, right?
See.
You need to get all of this in place as soon as possible. And even if you want to try to depend on what your job has, you get your own personal policy that
Right.
stays with
Right.
you forever, regardless of where you
Absolutely.
work, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just so many nuances to even that one discussion,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that
Mm-hmm.
you have insurance and all of
Right.
the legal aspects of it, yet alone the financial aspects of it. Again, um, having the different bank accounts available or money going into different accounts that will be available
Mm-hmm.
for use later on, making sure that
Mm-hmm.
you have the trust in place so that your assets are not going to have to be liquidated in order for you
Yeah.
to have that care, right?
Ooh, say that.
There are communities out there who this is just the way of life for them.
Yeah.
They have money coming out the wazoo. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes time for them to qualify for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid, they
Mm-hmm.
do,
They
regardless
do.
of how much money they have, because they have their money in the proper vehicles, right? For whatever reason,
Yeah.
taxation purposes, they're trying to not
Right.
be taxed too much,
I
and
get what
really
you're saying.
making sure
Mm-hmm.
that they qualify and that their assets that they work their bones to work their
They
fingers to
don't
the bones
lose.
and
Yeah.
expended all of this mental capacity to make sure that they've created this level of wealth, right? Because the point of generating that wealth is to be able to pass it down,
Pass it
not
on.
to
Yeah.
give it to the government, not to
Come
give it to
on.
the
Preach
home health
today.
aid, like, right? So we want to make sure that we have all of our assets in vehicles that will allow them to serve the purposes that we
Absolutely.
generated before in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Having that discussion, and we plan to have, because our group is new, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that will develop and be just the bomb,
Of
obviously.
course. Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so we plan to have different experts in all of these areas come and have talks so that we can
Absolutely.
get the information.
Yes.
What you do with that information is on you, but you
It's
will
on
not have
you.
an excuse to say you didn't know, because we're
Didn't
going to make
know.
sure you know, right? And that's
Exactly.
just touching on a few of the areas that you want to be mindful of when you're preparing for end of life. But I can't say enough, and nothing else, just having a list or having a sheet somewhere. Everything is on the interwebs nowadays, a Google sheet
Right.
with where these documents are.
Where the documents
Scan them
are.
and put the
Mm-hmm.
documents in the Google sheet so that they
Yeah.
have access to whatever you have to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
When you have taken the time to put in place your life insurance and any other types of policies, it's not helpful to your loved ones if they don't know where to find them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what the passwords are to
Wow.
get into this and
That
get
part.
online.
Yes.
Like it's something as simple as that. And that does require trust, right?
It
Um,
really
and
does.
so you're going to have to build the relationship with the person that you know will will honor your wishes
Mm-hmm.
and do right by you.
Look, I'm
And
taking notes, okay? Because
right.
I want to make sure that I've got everything. Because my stuff is kind of shored up, but now you got me thinking, okay, maybe I need to go back and reassess where I currently am.
Hmm. And
Because
we need to do that often, right? Yeah, we think we have it, but things have changed in our lives over the years.
they
So we
have
need to revisit this documentation. You wrote a will 10 years ago. Is that still what you want to have happen? You need
exactly
to go back and
and
revisit and make
revisit.
adjustments to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there's no reason why, if you get a health checkup, as you should, every year at least, and
Mhm.
however often depending on what your health status is, that
Mhm.
you don't do that same for your finances and your legal
Correct.
areas of your life and any
Right.
other areas of your life that are important for this
Mhm.
information to be up to
Mhm.
date.
And they're
This
really
is
ultimately, I think, to your point, Catherine, There are no excuses because, like you said, there's too much information out there. But I think what I love about what you're doing is you're putting it in one area so people can get to it.
Yep.
Right. So there is really no excuse for them to not join the Caregivers Connect, because the resources for learning how to get the support, where's my list? Because we had a list: caring for your loved one, taking care of yourself,
healthcare, planning for end of life,
planning for end of life, helping them to, take care of themselves where they can, in terms of remembering to take their meds and all of the other things, and
caring for yourself,
taking care of yourself, all of the things. So what we're doing is we're wrapping up here because we're almost out of time, but I wanted to make sure that people know that they can find you on Facebook at the Caregivers Connect.
Yes.
And I think this is such an important movement that you are creating, especially in the Black and Brown communities, because this is the story we don't like to talk about. Mm-hmm. We don't. We know it happens, and you always hear, Maylene passed, Yes, I know, Lord Jesus. Why ain't nobody done told me? How come ain't nobody done told me nothing? Yes, girl, the funeral was last week, and Jesus and the kids is fighting over the TVs that she
listen.
Or they had to wait 5 weeks in order to bury her because there wasn't enough money. And
if they lucky 5 weeks, huh?
But I think that this is needed because we need to pull the onion layers away from caregivers. Because even we always hear, Miss Laura and Mr. Billy down the street, both of them sick. And I went to go visit, but we never hear about the daughters, the sons, the friends, the family, the cousins that are helping to change the bed sheets and feeding and the combing and the washing of the hair and the clothes. We don't hear about those people and the help that is needed to give you all the reprieve that you need and the mental, emotional, and spiritual support that you need.
All of that right there. Yeah. Thank you very much. All of that. And I just want to point out, we have Facebook page, the Caregivers Connect, and we also have a Facebook group that's called the Caregivers Connect. So you want to make sure to look for those. And really, you want to come to the group is where all of this great information is going to be. You find the page. And my name, Katherine Beasley, is who I am. And so you can get to us that way as well. And you'll get access to it. And again, the group is geared specifically for women of color, right? We are elevating the caregiving experience of women of color is what we're looking to do. In which case, you'll have all this information that is specific to us. But again, everyone is welcome. You don't have to be a woman. If you are a male caregiver, and you're willing to be in an environment that might be predominantly women because you want to make sure you hear and learn the things you need to learn, join us, right?
I love that.
If you are not a woman of color, person of color, you can come too. The information will be relevant for anyone going through this experience. However, our focus is making sure that we as women of color get the pieces that we need that are extra, that are not just available out there to everyone.
I love that.
Everyone's welcome. Come on down.
Come on down. Katherine, we want to thank you so much for joining us today on our Lunch and Learn Hour this week, especially during Women's Month, right? So this is so important, especially knowing that we are the main caregivers of both our babies, our children, our husbands, our boyfriends, and our parents. And so we need that space. So once again, everyone, let's thank Katherine Beasley for coming to hang out with us today. We want to make sure that you guys get all of the information that you need. So check her out on Facebook. Her Facebook group is the Caregivers Connect. And also the Facebook page is the Caregivers Connect. Go ahead and check her out so you can start getting the information that you need to support yourself and to get the help that you need and the resources during such an emotional and trying time with our family, our parents, and sometimes even ourselves. So, So, guys, this has been real. This has been a very strong and emotional lunch and learn hour with us today. But you know what? This is a story that we need to tell. And as you know, our narrative is we are responsible for changing the narrative of how we tell our stories our way. And this is how we start, with these tidbits and these tips and telling the truth about what we're doing behind the cloaked bedrooms and back rooms for our loved ones. So
thank you for having me, my friend.
absolutely. And of course, we definitely want to have you back, because I want to dig into this and talk about what we need to do to take care of ourselves during this time. So I'm definitely going to, refer you over to Leanne with Wake Up Happy Sis, because that's all she talk about is taking care of ourselves. But listen, 3 things that I always like to tell you before we leave any one of our lunch and learns. 1, love your life. It is the only one that you have. 2, live your life to the fullest and embrace everything that is your life, because one day, guess what, folks? You won't be here. So make it count. And lastly, breathe through every single moment, because 1 breath becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes a minute, an hour, 24 hours, a week, a month, becomes years, becomes your life. Embrace it all. I will see you on the next edition of the Brownstone Worldwide's Lunch and Learn Hour. We'll see you next time.